Namaste, everyone. Suprabhatam. Again, a warm welcome to today morning's session by Dr. Nori Sivasenani on Vedanta Sadhana applications for daily life. We will begin with a short invocation. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। Dr. Nori, may I request you to come on video, please? Thank you. Dr. Nori Sivasenani is an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, who is presently working as a data science manager in Microsoft at Hyderabad. Hailing from a traditional observant family, he studied Sanskrit formally by taking a sabbatical from his work and completed MA in Sanskrit as a gold medalist from Osmania University, and then did an MPhil in translation studies from the University at Hyderabad, studying Sanskrit to English translations in Vedanta. His PhD in the area of philosophy of grammar and Advaita Vedanta was completed under the guidance of Mahamahopadhyaya, Professor Korada Subramaniam in 2016, under whom he studied Vyakarana and Mimamsa extensively along with Vedanta. Following the footsteps of M.M. Korada and the traditional framework, he uses a holistic approach to a given issue, applying concepts from all the Vidyasthanas and not restricting oneself to the field subject at hand. This can be seen in all his works, ranging from an estimate of Swati Tirunal to the philosophy of Kalidasa or the interaction amongst Vyakarana and Mimamsa, with ultimate effect on Vedanta in examination of a simple Sandhi. His areas of interest are Vedic studies, Vedanta, Vyakarana, Mimamsa, and Dharma Shastra. He served for many years on the executive committee of Sura Bharati Samiti, Hyderabad, which is involved in the propagation and promotion of Sanskrit, apart from publishing many books in Sanskrit and translations from Sanskrit. He is the vice president of the Nori Charitable Trust, which amongst other things has been conducting an annual Bhagya Nagara Veda Sabha for the last 18 years in Hyderabad, where Vedic scholars from Telangana and Andhra Pradesh participate. He taught courses under linguistics, translation studies, and Sanskrit at undergraduate and postgraduate levels in Osmania University of Hyderabad and Telugu University as guest faculty and part-time lecturer. Apart from teaching Sanskrit to many students at Sura Bharati Samiti and elsewhere, and delivering lectures for the EPG Pathshala on a wide range of topics. He recently translated the Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Sara Sangraha from Sanskrit to English, which is available at stage.srirangadigital.com. And his other works are also available at uohyd.academia@edu/Sivasenani Nori. We'll share the website links with you. Thank you, Doctor. Over to you.
Thank you, Lakshmiji. Sarvebhya. Let me start sharing my screen, and please let me know when you can see this. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Maybe I should minimize this, right? Okay. Om Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahmavidya Sampradaya Kartribhyo Vamsarshibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyaha Shruti Smriti Purana Namalayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavadpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram. I also salute Swamiji Sri A. Parthasarathi of Vedanta Academy. Almost 15, 17 years back, this entire concept that I'm going to present today was, while Swamiji's teachings are based on scripture, his teachings or his books are the first one through which I could distill this, and he and his students in the academy keep propagating this. And in that sense, whatever we are going to present today has bearings in Swamiji's teachings. Therefore, I also salute him before starting this. I have arranged today's contents in 3 parts. First, there will be a brief introduction to Vedanta Sadhana. I'll not be very heavy on the Sanskrit text or scriptures, but I'll give the references to aid those who are interested in where these concepts occur. The primary focus will be on Manas and Buddhi, where I'll cover different aspects concerning them, and then go on to the practical application. The attempt will be to spend more time on the last 2 parts rather than the first one. The first one is meant only to really locate where this occur within the scope of Vedanta Sadhana. So, what is Vedanta Sadhana? Usually, when we talk to a student of Vedanta Sadhana is described as consisting of 3 activities: Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. The source for this in the Vedas is there is the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad mantra, Atma va are drashtavyaha sotavyo mantavyo nididhyasitavyaha. Shravana is studying Vedantic text. Between the various schools, there are some differences as to what exactly will constitute Shravana. Manana is understood normally as reflecting upon those texts, and Nididhyasana as meditating upon those texts. While this technically is the correct Vedanta sadhana, this is for someone who has started with Vedanta, who started studying with Vedanta. Now, for a lot of us in the current age, it's like, we are all studying Vedanta, we are Vedantas. But this framework has a more orthodox or a more stricter requirement, wherein there is a qualification before one can start studying Vedanta, which, apart from study of Vedas and other areas of knowledge, one must be possessed of the sadhana chatushtayam. We are all aware of it, but we kind of gloss over it. Right? So, what is the sadhana chatushtayam? Again, known to many. This is called as the quartet of means, which are the nitya anitya vastu vivekaha, ihamutra bhoga viragaha, artha bhoga viragaha, shamadamadi sadhana sampat, mumukshatvam. Right? So, in English, if I can translate, these are the ability to discriminate between eternal and the ephemeral, the lack of attachment to the enjoyment of results in the world, here or thereafter, the hexad of equanimity and others, and desire for liberation. And where do we read this in Shastra? Vedanta starts with the Sutra. Vedanta Sutra start with Athato Brahma Jignasa. Now, what is Atha here? Atha is supposed to be thereafter, and also a Mangala Vachaka. The question arises, thereafter means what happened before this? What are you supposed to do before starting with Athato Brahma Jignasa? There, Shankaracharya explains this, and whatever I've quoted on Sanskrit in the left side is from there. And in various Prakarana Granthas, the same thing gets repeated. For example, in the Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Sara Sangraha, we have Chaturbhi Sadhanaihi Samyak Sampanno Yukti Dakshinaha Medhavi Purusho Vidvan Adhikari Atra Sammataha. The Adhikari for studying Vedanta should be having all these qualities. So, not talking about other qualities, but only about the sadhana chatushtayam. Within the sadhana chatushtayam, the third one called Shamagamadi Shakkam or Shamagamadi Sadhana Sampat. That is important. That's one of the eligibility conditions for studying Vedanta. It's like, you want to go and do MA Sanskrit, you need to have passed 10th class or 12th class if it is an open university, or you need to have been a graduate if you're going to normal university. Similarly, to study Vedanta, we are supposed to have these 4 qualities, which are Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha, Ihamutra Artha Bhoga Viragaha, Shamadamadi Sadhana Sampat, and Mumukshit. Within this hexad of Shama and others, the 6 qualities are Shama, Dama, Titiksha, Uparati, Samadhana, and Shraddha. And where do we again get this? We get the Shankara Bhashyam on the Brihadaranyaka mantra, where I've quoted the mantra in the beginning. Each is explained by Shankaracharya here, saying that who is Shantaha, who is Dantaha, etc. Shantaha is nothing but somebody who has the guna Shama, and Shanti is the quality of Shama. So they're all really derivatives of the same root. So these are the 6 qualities we need as one of the 4 eligibility criteria. These are Shama, Dhamma, Titiksha, Uparati, Samadhana, Shraddha. What is Shama? Shama is withdrawal from the activities of external sense organs. We can think of it as control over sense organs. What withdrawal really means is one might like good music, one might like a good book, but we should be withdrawing away from those pleasant sights and pleasant sounds, pleasant smells, etc., because those will distract us from our focus on the ultimate. Dhamma is, again, we can think of it as self-restraint, but it is withdrawal from the desires of the inner organ or the manas. We can think of it as control over manas. We will see that, the organs are both external and slightly internal also. Then we have forbearance, which is titiksha, then withdrawal from all desires. Samadhana is same as samadhi. Finally, we should have Shraddha, that is belief in Shastra and Guru. So in here, we will focus only on the first 2, Shama, Dhamma. So in terms of situating Vedanta sadhana, I'm taking one small part. I'm not even going to the sadhana part. I'm not even covering all of the eligibility conditions. I'm not even covering one part of the eligibility conditions. There I'm just covering 2. Even within those 2, when we look at Dhamma, we'll have inner organ, which has actually 4 components, where I'm only going to focus on manas and buddhi. This is so because this is a deep topic, and these 2 alone, if you focus on manas and buddhi, it has a lot of applications in daily life. Right? So control over sense organs and manas, these are the first 2 steps in gaining eligibility to study Vedanta properly. And one who achieves this can hope to achieve other eligibilities. So these are also fundamental in Vedanta sadhana. When you look at any Prakarana Grantha, you don't get mumukshutvam or nityantya vastu vivekaha or vairagyam just like that. It has to start with Shama and Dhamma. Right? So in that sense, these are the first steps of Vedanta sadhana. And once we get them, all of them can be gradually achieved, the other parts of the eligibility conditions. And it also happens that these 2 also have a lot of application in our daily activities. And all religions, philosophical schools of India, of Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, with all its different schools, Advaita Vedanta, Visishta Advaita, Dvaita Vedanta, Siddha Advaita, and so on and so forth, Veda, etc. Buddhism, Jainism, all of them agree on this as the prerequisite for the spiritual journey. In that sense, this is one road, that road containing Shama and Dhamma, which is common to all journeys. So we normally talk about many roads leading to Rome, but this is one road which leads to all destinations, which is Shama and Dhamma, control over sense organs and manas. Then there is a very famous chariot analogy in the Kathoparishad, where it goes, Atmanam Rathinam Vidhi Shariram Rathamevatu Buddhim tu Saratham Vidhi Manah Pragrahamevacha Indriyani Hayanyahu Vishayansteshu Gocharan Atmendriyan Manoyuktam Atmendriya Manoyuktam Bhokta Ityahur Manishinaha, where the entire body is compared to a chariot. The passenger is the soul. Buddhi is the charioteer. Manas is the rein. And Indriyas are the horses, and objects of enjoyment are the roads. Interestingly, this chariot analogy is also seen in Buddhism and also in Plato's dialogues. In Plato, there are 2 horses, white and black, which is, we can think of the divine and the human ones. And the charioteer is the reason with a capital R, which is the closest we have to the intellect. So it's a very close analogy of Plato to what the Upanishads say. But according to the Upanishads, there are 5 horses. The Buddhist analogy is different, where they talk about the samudaya or the collection, and it is more logically oriented, where we say that, the whole, there is one theory which says the whole is more than the sum of the parts, but in Buddhism, there is no whole as such, but it is only a temporary appellation to that. There, One Buddhist monk called Nagasena talks to the king Mihinda explaining that. But this chariot analogy is very famous across cultures, across schools, and this also is takes a central place in our discussion about Buddhi and Manas, where Indriyas are the horses, Manas is the reins, Buddhi is the charioteer. These terms, Buddhi and Manas, are slightly confusing in English because we use the word mind. Some people think that mind refers to Buddhi. But when we refer to the two parts of the Antakarana, Buddhi and Manas separately, mind maps to Manas and intellect maps to Buddhi. So whatever you say, mental image and all, it usually is about Manas. Right? So another way of referring to these two is head and heart. In English, we say, do I listen to my head or do I listen to my heart? Their head is Buddhi and heart is Manas. So we just keep this in mind. Now we'll come to next section, which is on Buddhi and Manas, on really our core topic of the day proper. So I just said that there are traditionally 4 elements of the Antakarana. This is common to Sankhya and Vedanta. These 4 components are Manas, Buddhi, Ahankara, and Chitta. Right? Each has a separate task. Manas is the seat of volition or sankalpa and vikalpa. This is where you say that I want to do this. Whenever we started the statement which says I want to or I want something, both of action or prapana, that means obtaining something, that desire is what comes in Manas. Buddhi is the seat of adhyavasaya or determination. That means it determines facts and also determines strategy, how to act really. Ahankara is the ego which owns the desire and action, or in Swami Sivananda's words, arrogates. And Chitta is the consciousness which holds memory. This is really a receptacle of memory and has the power to translate whatever decisions the Buddhi takes into action. So often it is common to reduce these 4 components only to 2 or only focus on the 2 called Buddhi and Manas. The key difference is that Manas is the seat of emotions, desires, etc., and one which controls the sense organs. Right? Buddhi has no direct control over the sense organs. Buddhi is the one which strategizes, which can evaluate different courses of actions, their implications for self, and then it can make a decision. It can also determine facts. So as I said, head and heart are good translations, but other translations are intellect and mind. Intellect means Buddhi, mind means Manas. The difference again between these two is Manas is where emotions are there, Manas is where desires are there. Manas is what controls the Indriyas. What are the Indriyas? All of us know that, right? Sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste. Let us look at some examples to see how Buddhi and Manas are in action. If you take an ice cream, the reaction of Manas is yummy. Okay, I want to eat this. Your Buddhi is what will say, oh, there's a lot of fat in ice cream, a lot of calories. Right? So Manas is about the short term. It wants immediate gratification. And Buddhi is saying that it's nice to have an ice cream, but you really need to control it, because if you keep on eating ice creams, you're accumulating a lot of fat and taking a lot more calories than what is advisable. Similarly, if you look at an action like studying, Manas is like, oh, it's so boring. No, I don't want to do this. Right? Whereas Buddhi is the one which is saying very faintly, look, if you study this, you will get the knowledge you desire. And at some point, that knowledge translates into success. And this is required for the success. But as you can see, Buddhi is a weak voice, and that initial what we call impulse or gut feel or whatever, right? It says, oh no, I want to do something else rather than study. People find 100 excuses not to do this. That's the Manas resisting the act. Or if you look at strategy, I've just taken a game of chess because it's easier to kind of picturize that and talk about it in a manner easy to relate. If you get a rook, the Manas will say, okay, this is a rook, I want to take it. All that I'm giving is a pawn for a rook, and this is great. But Buddhi is the one which understands this is a sacrifice, this is a trap. I need to think beyond this. I need to go 3 or 4 moves forward and understand why my opponent is offering a rook. Maybe my king is going to be under check and maybe I'm going to lose the game. Right? The ability to strategize and think ahead is what buddhi can do, whereas manas is like that rat which goes for the bread in the trap and gets trapped. Right? It is only focusing on the short term. It is focusing on gratification. It is focusing on what gives immediate results because it is a seat of emotions. We get immediate joy when we get a rook in a game of chess or obtain anything in life. Let's take another pure emotion like fear. When manas is the one which is acting, when you have something like fear, you scream, you run. Maybe both of them are dangerous. Maybe the right thing to do is stay calm, hold your ground. We don't know. One whose buddhi is strong is able to think and they can save. But sometimes, we see people doing foolish things because they're afraid. Right? Manas cannot think of the consequences of its actions. It just does what comes naturally to it. So that's how manas is. I hope these examples clarify what we mean by manas and buddhi. To repeat, manas is the seat of emotions like fear, love, joy, sorrow, etc. It is where desire is, and it is the one which does not want to act when it is in the long-term benefit. Okay? It looks at short-term pain and gain. It is what humans have in common with animals. This is very important. Animals are exactly the same. Like I said, in fear, they behave like what we just described. They cannot resist short-term gratification. That's why we are able to trap animals by just giving a bait somewhere. Right? They don't do long-term preparation. All animals are ready to face the world by the time of puberty. Humans achieve puberty around 12 or 13 or 14, and we have at least another 5-10 years of study left before we can face the world because we've made it so complicated. Right? And so on and so forth. And when we use your animal instincts, all of us, we see obesity, diabetes, and a lot of other things happening because we cannot trust our animal instincts when it comes to food, especially when food is so abundantly available. This manas then is what we share with animals. Buddhi is what thinks, strategizes, and thinks about the long-term benefit. Buddhi is really what differentiates human beings from animals. And if we want to really look at the anatomy of that, here's a photograph of or a picture of brain. We see that, let us start from the frontal lobe, which is there in some kind of a brick color, red one. Frontal lobe is where a lot of what we call about buddhi happens. At the peripheries, you can see a bit of motion control, speech and smell, which are really sensory controls. Normally, sensory controls happen in the parietal lobe. Then we have the temporal lobe, which is really what we call as manas. And we have the occipital lobe, which is only for sight. Vision requires a lot of processing, therefore it has a lobe almost on its own. And we have what is called the cerebellum or the small brain, where a lot of coordination happens. So if you look at this picture of brain, this green part is typically what animals have, right? And the part above the green part is called the R complex, and which is what human beings have in addition to animals. A large part of it is a lot of computational power required to be bipeds. For example, all of your sight and motor control and being able to walk on 2 feet happens from the occipital lobe, cerebellum, the fine motor control we have over speech, right? These are the additions, right? That's the reason why we don't find it in the animal part of the brain. But a big chunk of the difference of human beings with animals is the frontal lobe, which is missing in, at least not at this level and size in most animals. And this is where buddhi is. This is where we have discretion. This is where we have strategizing. This is where we have planning and problem solving, as zoologists would like to put it. But in terms of our ancient Indian terminology, this is where buddhi is. Okay? We'll kind of take a deeper dive into each of these. The frontal lobe is the one which is highlighted in the first picture, is where we have body movement. That's where the personality is. That's where concentration, planning, problem solving is. That's where we get the meaning of words. And emotional reactions or speech or smell, these are really the peripheral areas of frontal lobe that doesn't really constitute the buddhi part, but the bulk of the core of the buddhi is in the frontal. If you take the parietal lobe, this is where you have touch and pressure, taste, the body awareness, and these things. And the occipital lobe is where we have sight, in the cerebellum or the small brain, where we have this fine motor control or muscle control, where we get balance and coordination. We spend a lot of our energy in just balancing ourselves and in using our eyes. These two are these consume a lot of energy. So it's somewhere I read that if you simply close your eyes an entire day, you save as much energy as you would have by walking some 40 to 80 kilometers, depending on various things. So that's the kind of energy we spend in balancing ourselves and just seeing something and processing all those images. Then we have the temporal lobe, which is where we have the more primary senses like hearing, recognizing faces, emotion, and long-term memory. Right. So if we talk about chitta and manas, maybe that's where these are. And the limbic lobe, which is really, along with the temporal lobe, is where, which is the one which controls emotions like happiness, sadness, and love. So if I have to really map the ancient technology to the modern anatomy of brain, manas is what is completely on the right side, buddhi is what is the left side, and sensory control occurs through manas. Remember, we said sense organs are both external and internal. What we call by sensory control is what we say is the internal sense organs. By internal sense organs, what do we mean? It's very common that we say somebody is bodily present but absent from his mind, right? What's really happening is the eye is seeing the external eye, but the occipital lobe is not processing that. And that's what we say when manas has to combine with these indriyas to process any knowledge. To the way epistemology is defined in Shastras is that manas has to combine with indriyas for these to happen. Otherwise, we have words like paradhyasa, anyamanaska. And if you have a paradhyasa or if you are an anyamanaska, you cannot perceive anything. Though we have sense organs, it's as good as they are not there. So sometimes we say paschannapina paschyati, seeing but not seeing. So that's really the intermediate part. So we can include it as a part of manas or not. But our focus is more on differentiating what we see in white buddhi and what we see in black manas. I purposely chose those colors, keeping Plato's chariot analogy in mind. And this manas in Vedanta is the root cause of avidya. I'm just reproducing one, paragraph from Shankaracharya's Adhyasa Bhashya, where he says, just as animals and others turn away from sound, etc., when they appear to be unfavorable, after their ears, etc., come in contact with them, and they move towards this when they are favorable. And just as by noticing a man approaching them with a raised stick, they begin to run away thinking this one wants to hurt me, and they approach another carrying green grass in his hands. Similarly, even the wise are repelled by the presence of strong, uproarious people with evil looks and upraised swords, and are attracted by men of opposite nature. Therefore, the behavior of men with regard to the means and objects of knowledge is similar to that of animals. Shankaracharya goes on to say, avidya vad vishayani shastrani. Right? All shastras we have are full of avidya. They operate only when avidya is there. Right? So, and this manas, which is where we are exactly equivalent with animals, where we see this, right? I mean, we use it in training animals. If you look at positive reinforcement for training your pet, right? It says reward when they do a favorable action, punish them when they don't do. We have it pictorially here, but Shankaracharya was saying the same thing, that if you go to a cow and show grass, it thinks you are a friend, it will come towards you. But if you have a stick, it will run away from you. Similarly, human beings, when we have somebody trying to help us, we feel favorably inclined. When we get rewarded, we do more and more of that behavior. And this has not gone unnoticed, because this training of animals has gone beyond animals. Some people are a bit more ambitious. Okay, so to be truthful, this is, in this movie, this is a movie, and the husband doesn't really get trained, but you get the idea of what we mean by how human beings are on the same plane as animals, right? When they use their manas. To use the popular idiom, when a man thinks, through his belly or is focused only on beer and sports, this is what he gets reduced to. That he can be trained as much as a puppy can be trained. If you look at it, Swami Sivananda, a great thinker, he writes this about the mind in this book, Vedanta for Beginners. He says, mind is Jagat. The mind moves the senses, the pranas, etc. Mind is the cause of bondage and liberation. A keen study of the mind and its works is necessary for the study of Vedanta, the first step. And obviously it occurs in the first page of his book. During dream, the mind itself does the function of all the senses, despite the absence of external instruments or the senses, such as eyeballs, etc. See, we have vivid dreams where we can see things beautifully, we hear beautiful music, we feel all the emotions of fear, etc. So this mind, it is so powerful that it can see things when they're actually not, right? We need to respect that part. In the mind, all the senses are blended. Really, it is the mind that hears, tastes, feels, etc. Says, the mind vibrates if anyone abuses or praises you. We feel the pain or pleasure. Why do words have so much impact? Because the mind receives them and reacts, and it is a reaction of the mind which we think of as joy or sorrow. He says mind is miniature Maya. When the functioning of the mind stops and the mind is dissolved into the absolute, there is self-realization. So this is the connection of mind with Vedanta. Before we go into the application of it, I just want to reinforce this one part. If you look at the relative strengths of Buddhi and Manas, right? Manas is very strong, right? If no effort is made, Manas is what prevails in most situations, right? We have a lot of potential in our Buddhi, but it's as if God gave us a wonderful tool, but we kind of lost the key for it. Okay, so you have a BMW in your garage, but you don't have the key. That BMW is your Manas, your Buddhi. If we don't use it, we'll continue to walk. That's how it is. This Manas is wild and powerful, and it is destructive unchecked. Buddhi has a lot of potential, but is hardly used. It is not an exaggeration to say that in 99% of the situations, for 99% of the people, Manas is what dominates. Buddhi hardly comes into play. And we can see it. See, in most people, Buddhi is weak, right? Because by nature, it's like that. We need to find that key to this wonderful instrument. But strength of Buddhi is what sets apart successful people from other people. In this world, it is not the most powerful or the strongest who dominates. It is not the fiercest person who is the most successful, but it is the one with the strongest Buddhi who's successful. Otherwise, elephants would have ruled the world, or lions would have ruled the world. They are the fiercest, right? But no, they can be tamed. We actually tame both of them. Elephants we use like pets almost. We've domesticated them to a large extent. Why? We have Buddhi and we use their Manas by reward and punishment. We exploit that part. And whoever has this Buddhi as a strong point is the one who succeeds. When we say mankind has succeeded, it is really a few amongst us whose Buddhi is very powerful, who ensure that we prevail over nature. That's why most of us are afraid of street dogs, whereas as a race, humanity has prevailed over stronger animals. So this is what Buddhi is. And the amazing thing is that all of us have this wonder tool. We don't use it much. So the first step of Vedanta sadhana is ensure that the intellect controls the mind. We'll come back to the chariot analogy. The 5 horses which drag our body in various directions. Okay? Somebody wants to go to a party in the evening. Somebody wants to watch a cricket match. Somebody wants to watch a movie but not study. These are your sight, hearing, taste, touch and smell dragging you away. They are controlled by the reins called Manas. And the charioteer called Buddhi has to be able to use these reins to control these horses. If you are not a skilled charioteer, right, either Plato's reason or the Upanishads Buddhi, then these horses take us astray. We cannot control them. Anybody who ever sat on a horse knows that we need to impose ourselves on the horse, right? This is something very similar. And a chariot is even more difficult because it's not the power of one, but many more. And you need to be able to coordinate them. The charioteer has to be strong. Then the chariot will go where the passenger wants to go, where the yajamana of the chariot wants it to go. Right. So if Vedanta sadhana can be summarized, we need to start with this. Ensure that intellect controls the mind. And as it turns out, this has wonderful applications in daily life, in daily activities. I've picked up 5 activities to give a sample, but it's extensible. Let us take study. See, Manas by its nature is chanchala, very restless. So we talk about lack of attention in children because that's Manas acting, and Manas does not want to focus more. It does not focus easily. It avoids actions without benefits, immediate benefits. What do I get if I read this? That benefit needs to be there. from the point of view of Manas, studying is most unnatural, right? So what is really required is we need to convince the Manas of benefits of studying. See, in the software world, we observe something that when you ask somebody to learn a new language or whatever, and you give 3 months time, company pays for the training course, you pay a lakh of rupees for a person to go attend a course for 3 months and learn something, that person would not learn it well. But if there's a customer project and project is starting in 1 week and this person is assigned there, he or she learns it within 1 week without any training course. The whole point is, if there is a benefit, we can apply ourselves. If there is no benefit, Manas comes in between and says, no, I don't want to do this. Oh, I have 1 hour of lecture now to listen to, right? So right from children studying to we doing continuous learning as adults, we call it motivation. But what it really means is that without being convinced about that benefit, Manas will not allow us to apply ourselves to an act like studying. So it is the brain which has to step in and say, look, this is the benefit you have, right? And then studying happens. Now, how can we do it? Now we know that the framework, there is buddhi and there is manas. And buddhi is very, very good for us, but has a very weak voice. Manas is a strong one, which is resisting, which is that wild horse. We can exploit certain attributes of manas, is that it is susceptible to suggestion. Because manas is so primitive, so simplistic, you keep repeating the same thing, that becomes the truth. So this is why we have this, adage saying that repetition of a message firmly establishes it. And unfortunately, the truth value of the message does not matter at all. Because if a villain comes and says, I am the good person, I'm the good person, I'm the good person, if that is repeated 1,000 times, the manas believes that this person is good, a perfectly intelligent person. Why? Intellect knows that that person is not good, but manas is what is susceptible, and where manas is strong, we have things like Stockholm syndrome happen. Now, how do we exploit this part of manas? Buddhi can connect the benefits of the act of study. We need to repeat the same thing. We need to understand that to control manas, repetition is very, very important. That's the reason why we have these daily activities of puja and all that, wherein we say that Asavadityo Brahma, Asavaditya Brahma, that sun is Brahman. Repeat it many times, the stupid manas then will get convinced of it. But we need to really understand it with our buddhi that, this really corresponds to the Annamaya Kosha of Brahman. But anyhow, we do it in our tradition. We know that manas is susceptible to repetition. Therefore, you have a lot of rites and rituals which exploit this. We see this with political parties. They keep repeating a message. We see this with consumer goods companies where they keep repeating a message because then you know that this soap is great, this shampoo is great, or whatever, this cool drink is great. Actually, cool drinks are not good for you. They're sugar drinks, right? But they keep repeating the alluring images. Oh, we think it's good. That's the manas acting. But we can also use it. It need not be only the HULs and PNGs of the world which can use this, but we can use it, the same attribute of manas, for achieving our goals, something like studying. Now, in the case of children, buddhi is weak. So this determination that study is good needs to be supplied externally by adults. Right? How do we do that? Repeat the message. Children who start believing that the very fact that they are good at studies will make them very good in life. Right? So there are criticisms of this view, but the reason why parents repeat this is that we are acting as the buddhi for our children whose buddhi is not yet fully developed. And we know that manas is susceptible to repetition of message. So we repeat it without being very strong in any one instance. We keep saying it. Right? That's how we can use this framework to ensure that we become good, we or our dear ones become good at something like study. Somebody with a strong mind, right? They don't need a customer project to learn the latest, right? If their buddhi is strong, they don't have to wait for it. And those people who do that, they do better in work. We do that. Right? So you can use this framework in study. Now, if we come to something like playing or sports, usually we think the attributes of the body like strength, reaction time, they are important for success. They are important, but equally important or even far more important are things like discipline, mental strength, mental toughness, etc. All these phrases, they really are simply a different way of saying that buddhi should control the manas. And through manas, they are body. Okay? This plays out in practice, both quantity and quality, in actual games and pressure situations. In practice, what happens is, most people who know sports know that you just don't go and win in your tournament or in the game. You win that game in your practice, in your gym, right? The quality of a practice and the quantity of a practice. Every day you have to wake up early in the morning. Without fail, you have to go. In every movement you have shadow movements. Each movement has to be pure, right? The right muscles have to be used. The right, posture form should be there, right? And when you have the muscle memory of the good practices, your game will have strength, power, whatever is required, or you'll have endurance, right? So you win games actually in practice, not in the actual game. But in the actual game, again, you need to have the presence of mind. We should use buddhi properly, right? Especially when there come pressure situations where you have done all the practice, but you're not able to cope with that pressure. So with that, we see that in sports, while physical attributes are important, we see that there are players like Ravi Shastri or Jeff Marsh who might have limited talents, but by the sheer force of their will, they extract all the potential completely, their potential completely. Whereas the others, like infinitely talented, they don't really do well at the scene. I just will give example of one marvelous person, Bharat Ratna. In 2004, Tendulkar was going through a very lean patch, getting out on the offside, and he had an innings of 241 without a single cover drive. He recently spoke to India Today about it. Now, what does he say there? He says, imagine 241 over a couple of days and not a single cover drive, whereas maybe the most elegant shot in entire cricket is cover drive. To India Today, he said, after my conversation with my brother, I realized there was no weakness as such. If there was any weakness, then it was about shot selection. I realized I needed discipline to be in the driving seat. My natural instincts, they have to be sitting in the passenger seat. My discipline come what may, even if I was batting on 70 or 120, I was always going to have discipline in my driver's seat. Replace discipline and natural instincts with buddhi and manas. He understood in his own way that his buddhi has to control his manas. Buddhi, discipline, manas, natural instincts. This is what we see in great person after great person, whatever sport or we take. And even in daily, sports, amateur sports, where we don't play at this, whatever game you play, cricket, table tennis, badminton, tennis, or whatever, at our level, the person who makes fewer mistakes win. That means if you play a percentage sport, you do better. What is percentage sport? Being disciplined, allowing your buddhi to control your manas, not going for those lines, not going for glory, right? So in play, we see that having buddhi control your manas is really the secret to success. Okay, we say fine, those might be the cases, but there are some purely emotional transactions like relationships. We have relationships at various levels of family, friends, society, work, and relationships are all about emotions. And manas, being the seat of emotions, plays the biggest role in all relationships. But should buddhi control manas even here? Hey, can I not like somebody whom I like? Should my buddhi say that, is this person beneficial to me in the long term? Therefore, like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you depend only on manas for relationships, it is not reliable when it comes to ascertaining facts. Manas can lead you astray. That's why people get very emotional. That's why a lot of differences come up. Why? Manas sees more than what is there. Remember, your manas can recreate an entire world in your dreams, right? So we have this game called Chinese whispers. When somebody says peace, that girl goes to other person and says bees, it becomes knees, cheese, fleece. What was initially said and what came out are very different. Every time a human being is involved in the transmission of a message, that message gets modified. Why? A human being cannot take a fact and pass on a fact as it is, as long as that human being is working as the manas in play. Manas is this very fertile organ which imagines a lot, which adds masala, so to speak. Right? We see this. Now come back to relationships. Relationships have communications as their foundation, and every communication is, so to speak, corrupt. So what really is happening is that we don't get facts properly, right? And if the facts are not there, facts are assumed, are attributed, and that's where differences will start, right? For example, A says something to B. B does not know the background, but immediately imagines it. Very rarely does B says, okay, why are you saying this? Because it's not really cool to do that. It's not acceptable socially to say, to question why a certain remark is passed. And therefore we imagine. And when we imagine as per our mental state at that time. If we are very happy, if we are charitable, we imagine nicely, right? If we are ourselves in a very morose mood or in a bad mood, we attribute exactly the wrong motive to it. And once we attribute a motive to action, relationships start breaking down. For lack of time, I'm not expanding this, but if you look at any book on psychology or whatever, all that message is use your intellect, use your brain to ascertain facts, right? And that's what really will ensure that we have good relationships. Okay? Buddhi is what really allows us to decide what is best for the long term, right? For example, somebody says harsh words. Should we reply in harsh words? I'm not talking about what we call a very calculative nature, what we call matlabi in Hindi, that, okay, if I say something, I lose. No. We all feel good when we do good to others. We all feel bad when we hurt others. There's a chemical called dopamine which gets released when we praise others, right? So when we are harsh with others, forget any benefit in the long term that we are losing. We ourselves won't feel good about it, but in order to spite the face, sometimes we cut our nose. That's what reacting to harsh words with harsh words is. And most often people are much more simple than what we assume them to be, right? We just need to be curious, patient, and understand where they're coming from. The moment we do that, we'll have very strong relationships and very good relationships. It takes two to really produce sound in a clap. And if one party refusing to participate in that impulsive kind of motion, then relationships stay strong, right? So this is the basis of parenting, of happy married life, good friendships, good work relationships, being a responsible member of society. Everywhere, this same play happens with various different specifics. Okay, this is a kind of essence of our interactions with other people. And similarly, work as well, right? I mean, if you look at all the ingredients of success at work, they are a result of strong intellect. Everybody says hard work is required. What is hard work? Hard work is what is being ensured by the intellect, by buddhi, by linking the pain of hard work to long-term goals. Discipline, we know, is important at work. It's not that, we say 99% perspiration, 1% genius. Discipline is actually very unnatural behavior, but it is imposed by intellect, again, by linking to long-term goals. If you look at teamwork, right? Again, teamwork is self-sacrifice by and large, being empathetic, building good relationships. If you let manas do it, it will spoil that. It is buddhi which ensures that we are good teammates. Similarly, knowledge. And if you go to higher levels of success like strategy is purely a function of intellect. We've actually seen in the anatomy of brain, the frontal lobe is what is able to do the planning, right? Manas is incapable of strategy. And the biggest determinant of success at work is ambition and willpower. These are nothing but different words for a strong intellect. In that sense, only one who has a strong buddhi becomes successful at work. Same is the case in spirituality. See, manas, as Swami Sivananda said, manas is maya, miniature maya. Okay, manas is jagat. It is what distracts us, right? This is what deviates a person away from the spiritual path. All spiritual sadhana is about actually initially controlling manas, right? Whether we do meditation, worship, prayer, bhajan, satsang, that is company of good men, all of it is first to ensure that our manas is controlled. And in things like satsang, since we know that it will keep on diverting to various ways, we first ensure that it goes to good ways. And if it listens to good things for maybe 1,000 days, it will get established that this is the path that is to be taken, and we own the difficult path or we own the desired path through our manas, right? So this is how we do. And even in spirituality, this manas is very important. At a different level within spirituality, the fourth stage is sannyasa. On the left, you have the application for sannyasa from ISKCON. They have something called Ministry for Sannyasa Services. And there's actually an application form. I was happy to see this because I could show you something, right? And at some page 5 or 6 in the application form, they have this particular thing, which is that in exceptional cases, a man may be awarded sannyasa below the age of 40 by a 2/3 majority vote of the GCB body. To take sannyasa at the age of 50, one must have been on a waiting list for 2 years. At 45, 3 years, at 40, 4 years, and at 35, 5 years. What happens is, if you want sannyasa, no guru will give sannyasa straight away. There is a cooling period, there's a testing, right? Did this person achieve these 2 stages? At least. Of course, what is really looked at is all the 4 qualifications. But more than all the 4 qualifications, what gets tested are these 2. First is this person's manas under control, and this is across sampradayas. On the left, we have the Advaita Vedanta equivalent sampradaya. On the right, if you look at any Advaita sampradaya, sannyasa is not offered immediately. I remember my mother telling about her guru in Guntur, waiting for 2 months in the ashrama, in the Peetham. He was just being tested. Is he able to control his manas? After spending 2 years, after Kalyan Bharati Swami became convinced, then this person became Ramananda Bharati Swami. Right? So this happens everywhere in spirituality also, that we have to control this manas to really progress in our spiritual path. Finally, how can we strengthen the brain? Here I want to issue a disclaimer. See, I share this based on study of scriptures as a student, as a seeker. This is theoretical knowledge. We have to approach a guru for proper guidance of how we can strengthen our brain, because if my brain were sufficiently, if my buddhi were sufficiently strengthened, and if my manas was fully under control, I wouldn't have been a grihastha. I would have taken sannyasa by now. So you're listening to whatever you listen from an imperfect student who's still in the path. The 2 parts of strengthening the brain or strengthening the buddhi is awareness and practice. First, we understand the framework. We analyze the situations, any transaction, and become aware of which part is driving what action. We just seen a few actions, and all of it we see how manas and buddhi play. We can do this with self and others. And once we observe a behavior, we need to also look at, okay, this is my observed behavior. What should have been the ideal behavior? Okay, it's easiest to think when we take ourselves away from the situation and when we're not in the heat of the moment. You know, somebody has an accident on the road. On the road, you are in a rage. You cannot think properly. Your manas is what is acting. Think calmly about it. We see that 90% of our reactions on the road are inappropriate, right? So that's what we mean. Like, observe behavior and then analyze it separately. This is what awareness is all about. And then we start exploiting the weakness of manas, wherein if you analyze the situation 10 times, when the actual situation comes, we react like that. This is behind all the training we get in public speaking or whatever, which is that just get the manas, get used to it, it will start doing it. See, we are supposed to walk on our feet, not on our head. But you practice enough, you can do Shirshasana and be on your head. Exactly what it is. So once we know what needs to be done, we need to practice that. And in this, we need to start with control of sense organs. Among the sense organs, the most difficult to control is vak, speech. Okay? We need to set clear, small goals, like saying that, okay, I'll not use any foul words. Okay, this is an easier target. We can stop using foul words or these curses very easily. A slightly more difficult target is anudvegakaram vakyam. Can I speak only those words which will not make the other person agitate? That's a far more difficult goal. But this is how we need to increase our goals. Or we say no to food. Just like, speech is difficult, its sister tongue is equally difficult, right? This is where we get deviated the most. Can we say no to a certain food? It could be fat, it could be sweet, it could be meat, whatever we want. I'm not saying any one thing is what we should do, but it's up to us. Or if somebody is intaking substances like tobacco or alcohol, can you say no to that, right? Anything you intake which is not good for you, you can set a small, clear goal wherein your manas and indriyas want it, but you increase the strength of your buddhi by stopping it, and every say you see the results. Okay. Can we do some amount of time, hours, minutes, in study, exercise, meditation, puja, whatever we want, so that we give the suggestion to manas and we strengthen our buddhi. The key is small goals. We cannot have very big goals. We cannot become a sannyasa overnight, right? Sannyasi overnight. We need to do it regularly and we need to increase it gradually. This, I submit, is the way we really strengthen the buddhi. And different methods work for different people, but once the goal is set and the benefits understood, practice almost comes immediately. Right? I'll conclude my session. I've taken a bit more time than what has been allocated. Again, buddhi not fully in control. Self-control is the first step of Vedanta sadhana. The brain has two components, buddhi and manas. Manas is common to animals and humans. Buddhi is what differentiates humans from animals. Manas is very strong and buddhi is usually weak. We need to respect manas a lot. Don't take it for granted. Buddhi should control the manas. Intellect should control the mind. That's one message I want to give. And one whose manas is controlled fully by buddhi becomes successful in any field of activity. And this buddhi, intellect, can be strengthened by practice. So, as Gita Acharya Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, Etad buddha buddhiman syat. Having understood this, one may become endowed with buddhi. I stop here and maybe take questions. Or
yes.
Krishna
Yes.
Chaitanya.
Thank you, Dr. Nori. Yes, there are questions.
Yes.
So first is Vivek Lal is asking, a robot can have manas but can't have buddhi. Is this correct? Is the statement correct?
See, I am in the field of artificial intelligence myself. Even if you get manas, it's a huge improvement, right? You might have heard about the recent fiasco at Google last year, and they said one of their LLMs was sentient, right? Emotions are very difficult to replicate. I believe robots do not yet have manas. They have some control over what we can say is computer vision or computer hearing, etc. But emotions is still not there, I believe. So there's no question of buddhi, even manas is not there fully. That's what at least I believe.
Okay. The next is Shilpa S is asking, where can she access this PPT?
It will be sent to Indica. Nitinji can say where it is available. But I'll also put it up in my what we call equivalent of homepage in academy.edu. And all that you need to really is go to Bing or Google and search for my name, and this you should be able to get it fairly fast. But in the notes, if you give that academy.edu, right, I'll upload it in a couple of days.
Okay, thank you. So there is a question by Mahesh Aswane. He basically speaks about neurons. He asks, please clarify how the neurons get differentiated into the buddhi and manas, and how can neurons be the seat of memory in the amygdala. And finally, if it is neurons in different areas of the brain which differentiates the buddhi and the manas, how does one explain chitta, which carries samskaras from birth to birth?
See, neurons are very close to me because I am in the field of artificial intelligence and we build artificial neural networks, right? So neuron is the simplest one. It's like your, gate in electronics, or it can be a state which is 0 or 5 volts, that kind of thing. So the beauty is in how neurons combine and in the synapses, right? And frankly, our understanding of the anatomy as to what results in buddhi and what results in manas, what is long-term memory and what is not, is very limited because all neurological studies depend upon the presence of hematite in blood, right? We want certain probes to flash, and that's where we say, okay, there's activity in the frontal lobe and all, but there is a gap, right? After a particular area is activated, the chemical reaction needs to happen, and that's what really comes about. So researchers are increasingly saying that we have some view, some delayed view. It is like we are seeing some distant star gobbling up a planet, and we are seeing it after 15,000 years because it's happening 15,000 light years ago, right? Similarly, our study of the brain, by and large, is delayed and very imprecise, right? The kind of areas that are lighting up is slightly funny. So my personal belief is that our understanding at an atomic level as to what is happening or what we observed or the rishis observed as phenomena, and they just used abstract concepts like buddhi, is still nowhere near what we have in other fields like physics, right? Even if we know why an apple falls from a tree, even if the theory is limited and kind of flawed in a universal sense, we have a very good understanding why an apple falls to the ground. We are nowhere near that kind of understanding about memory or why certain neurons in certain combinations become the manas and in certain other combinations become the buddhi. At least this is what I'm exposed to and what I believe is.
All right. Ashok Gudsorkar ji, he says it was a very nice presentation. And he also asks, what is the buddhi? It's very clear. Now, what is chitta? Please explain in detail.
This chitta is a wonderful thing, right? And it really requires a lot more time than what we have available, Ashokji. But I'll just quote one Yoga Sutra. You'll understand the depth of that chitta. Okay? The very first sutra of yoga. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Okay, this chitta has vrittis, which is the source of all our misery, right? And if you can control that, we really are getting into samadhi state. That is how chitta is, right? So again, a very abstract thing. And in most Indian traditional schools of epistemology, but not all, the way we get perception or cognition is that whatever we see, our chitta takes that form, and that is what is called chitta vritti. If you see a pot, the chitta forms the form of the pot, right? And that is chitta vritti. And in that sense, we have the ideal, and what Plato calls ideal, the in our mind. Okay, when we say mind, chitta is exact component of the brain where this is there, and that's where we have charamavritti and all various concepts. And this chitta is the one which yoga, entire school of yoga, is trying to say that make it calm, make it quiet, make it planquid like a lake without any ripples. And only in such a lake can Chaitanya reflect, right? So that really is the chitta part, but we really cannot go more in depth into it. That's the reason why I limited myself to buddhi and manas in this particular time. Even there, I exceeded the time.
All right. We'll take a last question. Vrushali Kene is asking, what happens to the Alzheimer's patient in terms of the buddhi, manas, and the chitta?
Ma'am, I've not really thought through about it. I know very little about what's happening in the brain in Alzheimer's. I submit that I'm not really qualified to speak on that.
All right. And Subhash Yadav asks, does AI lead to the strengthening of buddhi in our lives?
Not really. AI is like a pressure cooker, right? AI is like a cycle. It just helps us do certain things better. And each one of them, yes, if used properly, buddhi can be strengthened, right? But they're really tools up to us how we use them.
Okay. I think that's all, Dr. Nori ji, with such a wonderful presentation.
There is one question from Krishna Chaitanya ji. Okay. What are the various distinctions in Shravana as per various schools? Again, see, at least in Advaita, Bhamati, and the Vivarana Prasthanas, they go into great differences about Shravana itself. And I submit that, Krishna ji, this is not really the forum to go more into that, because this is about applications in daily life. And what we're talking about differentiation in Shravana is all about Vedanta. And even there, it's theoretical difference, I would say. Follow any school, follow a part of it, achieve a part of it, will be great people. Okay, there is also one thing from Sri Rajgopal and Iyengar. Astika Naskas do not say Panchendriyas, Manas under control. Does Vedanta Saras Anubandha Chatushtaya is followed in Naskas, especially when they do not believe in Veda and Ishvara? Okay, sir, this is a very interesting question. Let me paraphrase the question of, I hope it's okay, Lakshmi ji, if I spend a few more minutes, right?
Yes, we have 3 more minutes. We can conclude by 8:10.
Okay, sure. So, Rajgopal and Sri, they might not use the same terminology. For example, Buddhism is a Nastika darshan, right? But whatever I said, controlling manas through buddhi is what is nowadays called secular Buddhism. saying that you don't. Buddhism, in my view, is a clear itself to start with, but still, I have a close friend. There are programs like Vipassana, which actually try to do the same thing, right? They use different terminology. And that's what happens. But if you go away from Buddhism, go to Western, philosophies, some of them are very religious, some of them are not, but you have adages like mind over matter. What is mind over matter? It is a different way of saying Buddhi should control manas, right? If you look at all the self-help books, not all of them believe in God. There are a lot of atheistic self-help books. Every self-help book is a deep or is one interpretation of the theme that Buddhi should control the manas. So within Indian Nastika Darshanas, we don't have too much of literature which is available. A lot of it is reconstructed, and the focus is more on differences. But and whatever we say that Ghrutam Runam Kritva Ghrutam Piba, that's not really a good characterization of these Nastika Darshanas. I have reason to believe that all Nastika Darshanas also subscribe to the theory that we must have self-control, though we don't have attestations of that in literature. What is varieties and what are the Ashok Khanna, with respect to mind, what is varieties and Paratya? I don't think I understood well. And Vijayaji said this is gist of Gita, 3rd chapter. I mean, I agree with those, but yeah, let's conclude here. Thank you, Nitinji. Thank you, Lakshmiji and Indica, for providing this platform. I hope this will be useful to at least some.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nori ji. So not tomorrow, today evening 7 p.m. we'll have a session by Dr. Vinaya Chandra Bhanavati on an introduction to Gita Bhashya of Shankaracharya. Looking forward to have all of you there. It will be another wonderful session. We will conclude with the Shanti Patha. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.